For years, he was seen as one of the most trusted men on Wall Street. Bernie Madoff wasn't just another investor, he was a former NASDAQ chairman, a respected insider, and the man people believed could deliver steady profits no matter what the market was doing. But behind that calm, consistent success was something far darker. Investigators later uncovered a scheme worth an estimated $65 billion, making it the largest financial deception of its kind in history. Thousands trusted him. Almost no one questioned him. And for decades, the truth stayed hidden in plain sight. Before we continue, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let's dive into how this entire empire was built from the ground up. Long before the scandal, Bernie Madoff had already built a reputation that few people dared to question. He started small in 1960, using just $5,000 he had saved from jobs like lifeguarding, along with a $50,000 loan from his father-in-law. From that point, his firm slowly grew into a serious force on Wall Street. Over the years, his company became deeply involved in stock trading, especially in handling large volumes efficiently. By 2008, his firm was the 6th largest market maker in S&P 500 stocks, a position that gave him credibility few could match. He wasn't just part of the system, he helped shape it. He even served as chairman of NASDAQ, placing him at the center of the financial world. To outsiders, everything looked legitimate. His trading business was real, active, and highly respected. That visibility created a powerful shield. People saw the success, the influence, and the connections, and they assumed everything behind it was just as solid. What most didn't realize was that this success had two sides. One was visible, trusted, and proven. The other stayed hidden, operating quietly without the same level of attention. And that hidden side is where the real story begins. Behind the public success, there was another operation that very few people truly understood. Bernie Madoff kept his investment advisory business quiet, almost hidden. It wasn't openly marketed. Instead, people got in through referrals, close circles, and trust. That made it feel exclusive, like an opportunity not everyone could access. He presented a strategy that sounded advanced but safe, often described as a steady approach that could deliver consistent results. Investors were told they could expect returns around 10 to 12% each year, even when markets were unstable. That kind of stability stood out, especially during uncertain times. But there was a problem. No one outside his firm could truly verify how those returns were being generated. The operation didn't rely on independent audits, and the accounting was handled internally with very limited oversight. Even the firm responsible for reviewing records was extremely small, raising quiet concerns that never fully turned into action. At the same time, investors were often encouraged to stay in and avoid withdrawing funds quickly, reinforcing the idea that patience would bring steady gains. From the outside, it looked controlled and reliable. But inside, the lack of transparency was growing into something much bigger. And that's when the numbers stopped being real and started becoming something else entirely. At its core, the operation was far simpler than it appeared. Bernie Madoff was not investing client money the way people believed. Instead of placing funds into real trades, the money was deposited into a single bank account. When investors wanted to withdraw, their payments didn't come from profits, they came from other clients' deposits. Inside the firm, employees created detailed reports to make everything look legitimate. Fake trades were entered into the system, often backdated to match real market conditions. In some cases, returns were decided first, and the trades were filled in later to match those numbers. Monthly statements showed steady growth, even during periods when markets were falling. The system depended on a constant flow of new money. As long as more funds kept coming in, withdrawals could be covered, and the illusion stayed intact. Over time, this pattern became routine, repeating again and again without raising immediate alarms. There are indications that this setup may have been in place for decades, possibly reaching back as far as the 1970s. By then, the structure was deeply embedded. But the real strength of this system wasn't just how it worked, it was who believed in it without question. The operation didn't grow by chance. Bernie Madoff carefully built trust within specific circles where reputation mattered more than verification. Much of the money came through close-knit communities, especially wealthy social and charitable networks where introductions carried weight. People didn't feel like they were taking a risk, they felt like they were being led into something exclusive. Many investors entered through referrals, not advertisements. Family offices, charities and foundations placed large amounts of money without demanding full transparency. Some organisations invested tens of millions, believing their funds were safe. In one case, a foundation associated with Elie Wiesel lost around $15.2 million when the structure collapsed. The approach relied on familiarity. Shared backgrounds, social ties, and long-standing relationships lowered skepticism. Even institutions committed significant portions of their assets, with some placing over $100 million into the system. For many, being involved felt like a sign of status. This network effect made the structure stronger. As more trusted names joined, others followed without asking deeper questions. Doubt was replaced by confidence, and confidence kept the flow of money steady. But while trust kept everything growing on the outside, warnings were already building underneath. While the system kept growing, not everyone was convinced. Harry Markopolos was one of the few who looked closely at the numbers and immediately saw something was off. In 1999, he analysed the returns being reported and realised they didn't make sense mathematically. It didn't take long. Within minutes, he suspected the strategy could not work as claimed. After deeper analysis, he concluded it was either a hidden method no one else had access to, or something far more serious. Over the next decade, he repeatedly sent detailed warnings, highlighting patterns that didn't match real market behaviour. The returns showed unusual consistency, with very few down periods over many years. At the same time, the volume of options trading required to support those results simply wasn't visible in the actual market. Even after submitting detailed reports outlining these issues, the concerns didn't lead to meaningful action. The warnings kept coming through the early 2000s and beyond, each one pointing to the same conclusion. But the system continued operating without interruption. For years, the signs were there, clearly laid out, but they never triggered the kind of response that could have stopped it early. And because those warnings went nowhere, the operation kept expanding beyond anything anyone imagined. As time went on, the operation didn't just survive, it expanded at a massive scale. Bernie Madoff built a system where growth itself helped maintain the illusion. New money kept entering through feeder funds and trusted networks, while existing investors often reinvested what they believed were real profits. On paper, the accounts showed enormous success. By 2008, client balances reflected nearly $65 billion in total value. But the reality was very different. The actual amount of money investors had put in was closer to $17 to $20 billion, with the rest made up of fabricated gains. Everything stayed inside the system. There was no independent verification of trades, no external custody of assets, and no real oversight of transactions. Records were created internally, giving full control over what investors saw. Even small losses were sometimes added to make performance appear more realistic. The scale itself became part of the deception. As the numbers grew larger, it became harder for people to believe something so big could be built on false information. Confidence increased instead of suspicion. By this point, the structure depended on one thing above all: constant inflow. And the moment that inflow slowed down, everything began to fall apart. The turning point came during the 2008 financial crisis, when panic spread across global markets. Investors who once trusted the system suddenly wanted their money back. Within a short period, redemption requests surged to around $7 billion, far more than the operation could handle. Behind the scenes, the situation was already critical. Earlier in 2008, the main account held over $5.5 billion, but by late November, it had dropped to just $234 million. The gap between what was owed and what actually existed had become impossible to manage. On December 10th, 2008, Bernie Madoff admitted the truth to his sons. He told them the investment business was one big lie. The next day, after they contacted authorities, he was arrested. There was no complex investigation that brought it down in the end. It collapsed because the system could no longer keep up with withdrawals. The flow of new money had slowed, and without it, the structure had nothing left to support itself. In just days, something that had run for decades unraveled completely, and once it collapsed, the damage spread far beyond just money. After the arrest, everything moved quickly. Bernie Madoff pleaded guilty on March 12, 2009, to 11 federal charges, including fraud and money-related offences. Just a few months later, on June 29, 2009, he was sentenced to 150 years in prison, the maximum allowed. The financial damage was massive. Thousands of investors were affected, and the actual losses were estimated at around $18 billion in real money. Over time, efforts to recover funds returned about $14.8 billion to victims, but many never fully recovered what they lost. The personal impact was just as serious. Families were affected, careers ended, and several charities and foundations were forced to shut down after losing their funds, with long-term emotional and financial strain. He spent his remaining years in a federal facility where his health declined. On April 14, 2021, he died at the age of 82 while still serving his sentence. In the end, the scariest part of the Madoff story isn't the crime, it's how it ended. The FBI didn't kick down his door because they cracked the case. They only showed up because the 2008 financial crash forced Madoff to admit the truth to his sons. It was all one big lie. He went from a penthouse to a 150-year prison sentence, leaving behind a destroyed family and thousands of victims who woke up to find their fortunes had vanished into thin air. What do you think? With all the technology we have today, a scam of this scale could still be hidden in plain sight. Hit the like and subscribe button so you never miss our next video about a real crime story. Stay safe. Thanks for watching.